you were in my.
Hello, welcome to Fairy Whispering Podcast. I'm Claire Casely, your host, and today I have Rachel Blackwell with me, who's a artist. She's a mural artist and illustrator based in Shropshire. Her style is very detailed and whimsical and colourful and influenced by fantasy art and children's illustration. And she calls the enchanted realm that our paintings are based within the ethereal earth. So ethereal because it's magical, and mystical and not of this world, and earth because it's very much based in this world and on the planet in which we live. Welcome, Rachel. So glad to have you as a guest.
I'm delighted to be here. This is so
Yeah,
exciting.
and I should just explain for people watching this as well that we're both wearing our cloaks. We decided because I thought I've got this lovely new cloak. It's by an Etsy seller called Goddess Handmade, which I wanted for my fairy whispering work. Fairy said you need a cloak, so I thought, okay, I'll get a cloak, and it's beautiful. It's really warm. And then Rachel said, I'm going to put my cloak on as well. So yeah, Rachel, could you say a bit about your cloak and where yours is from and design and things?
I've completely forgotten where it's from. Hold on.
Oh, don't worry.
It's from Leonardo Carbone. I think it was from a website in Holland.
Oh, lovely.
I brought it for my Druid grade, not my Bardic grade, for the Druid course.
Fantastic. And before we came on, you were just talking about a bit about that and also this big life change that you had a couple of years ago. Is
Yeah,
that right? Yeah. And I just thought that'd be a good place to start because quite often when we have these changes, magical things can happen as part of
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a really transformative time. So I don't even know where to start with that, really. So back in 2019, how do I start? So I think it started going to Five Rhythms dancing, which is like a conscious sort of shamanic dance, which led me to go to a place called Wild Ways, which is a retreat centre in Shropshire run by Druids. And I had some quite intense experiences at that weekend and really got back in touch with my inner being and myself and what was true for me. And not long after that, I broke up with my partner of 13 years, which was quite scary times. And then 4 months later, the pandemic hit, and we got 2 weeks before the lockdown, I moved in with some people to be their lodger.
Okay.
And then, gosh, it just all exploded. So I ended up living in my van in Kidderminster, in Glastonbury, in Stourport, and then became homeless for 20 minutes. Oh gosh, I feel like I'm rambling and not getting this.
No, carry on. This is all really wonderful, really interesting. So a lot of people will connect with this, what you're saying, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I had to kind of completely surrender to the universe and allow it to just spirit, the universe, my guides to really show me the way, because I didn't know the way. So there was this Scorpio full moon in the first lockdown where everything exploded, and I ended up, instead of going back to where I was living, which wasn't working for anybody there, I ended up staying in my van and just being in the light of this Scorpio full moon. And then I ended up homeless-ish with my van. And I put a post on Facebook going, help! I've got nowhere to live. And I had, within like hours, I had 30 places to live. And
gosh. Yeah. Wow.
Which led me to over towards Shropshire. And I spent a lot of time connecting with the land and with the beings of the land, both seen and unseen, and that gave me a really good grounding and healing and strength. And then I was invited down to Glastonbury for a month to paint a mural for the mural trail, and spent a month living on the high street in Glastonbury. So which was completely wild.
Yeah. Wow.
Which was great fun, but also kind of, it was like, oh, I'm really enjoying this. This is scary and terrible. And
yeah, so like I can imagine the ups and downs, gosh, with thinking, yes.
especially with the complete surrender to it all, and they're just like enjoying and then the like, so, and then I got a commission street to paint this enormous mural for someone's private swimming pool in Solihull. So I knew I had to come back up this way. So I found somewhere to live near Starport, in a place called Wilden. It was just by this beautiful red sand common. So I painted that and then decided to stay there for a while and kind of try and get some ground beneath my feet and get myself properly on my feet. But then I broke my ankle.
Oh gosh.
A few months. I was exploring these industrial ruins that have got these amazing graffiti with a friend, and then I jumped off a small wall and it just went. So yeah, that, and I was living up in this attic, and the people I was living with weren't really there. So that was another kind of, oh my God, what's happened to my life? And then we're in lockdown, and I did this series called A Light in the Darkness from the Samhain to the winter solstice that year, basically to keep myself sane. But so every day I came up with a new image and painted it, and there's 50 paintings in that series, and it's really interesting people's responses to it. That one, because there's a lot of hope in there, but there's also, it is like darkness and with the light in it, and I'm hoping that might get turned into an oracle set at some point.
That's, I just had a yes then in my body with that. That sounds really powerful.
It was really, really powerful. Strangely, I'd set the intention a week before I broke my ankle. I'd been on a dancing retreat for 5 days, and I set the intention at the ending circle to live purposefully and on purpose. And be careful what you wish for, because just over a week later, I landed back from the hospital. I made myself a cup of tea. And then I didn't know how I was going to get that cup of tea from the kettle to somewhere to sit and drink it and go out in the garden. And everything that I had to do had to be fully planned and fully on purpose. And oh my gosh, I kind of, so that was a very interesting experience.
So, is And you have this connection with the Fae and the other world, very close connection that you channel into your art. You were just saying about
Yeah.
your oracle. And what sort of guidance were they giving you as part of this journey? What sort of guidance did you receive, or was it very much felt, and you were just following your intuition, and then given signs, or did you have any sort of direct messages or visualizations or dreams or of any kind that guided you?
Yeah. So the vision I got was of the earth pulling me down by my ankle and telling me quite firmly, ground yourself.
Mm,
Um, and I had, it came through. So I sat in the garden every day and I made friends with a robin. And it would, and I got some bird feed. And so every morning I'd go out and drink my cup of tea and give some bird feed. And after a few weeks, it would come and sit on my broken ankle boot. And
oh, that's beautiful.
and it felt like nature spirit, the robin was like supporting me. And
Mm,
I also had a blue tit fly. I was living in this attic and a blue tit flew into the room. And I've got a thing about sometimes fae don't come as what you, they transform and shapeshift and
yes.
will come in the most comfortable form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if a little fairy had come and flown into my room at that time, I'd have thought I'd gone insane.
Mm,
So a blue tit flying into the room, it just felt like a real message of like hope
yeah.
and yeah, just real hope, and that the lightness is still
Mm,
here, and
mm.
um, you can get through this. That's all right. And I ended up drawing a blue tit talking to a fairy that day. It just kind
Oh, I'm
of
gonna cry. This is so beautiful. I mean, I love your art. And when, people, please check out Rachel's art. It's amazing. I'll put your details obviously in the description for this
thank
episode
you.
so people can find you. But yeah, so what an amazing experience to have. So you were very guided by nature, the other world at this
Yeah,
time. Oh, and so that moved your art forward as well. And
it did.
yeah,
Yeah.
and and did you continue to have a connection with these birds, or has that sort of flourished since then, or with other birds, or is it just something of that time?
So I kind of have these little magical nature experiences from time to time that feel like spirit, fairy, I never know what to call it, is speaking to me through it.
Mm.
So the latest one was an owl that
Oh,
um, which was really beautiful. The other week I was driving home in the dark down the lane from a friend's house, and there was a thing in the middle of the road. And I drove it, I slowed down and I got there, and then there was this owl, and it just took flight in front of me and was flying in front of my van for ages and ages. And it just
amazing.
felt so magical. So the next day I was like, I've got to paint this owl now.
Yeah.
I painted that one, and as I was painting it, these blue roses appeared in its talons with little tiny fairies.
Oh,
And
oh, that sounds gorgeous.
yeah.
Oh. And what was the significance of the blue roses for you? Is there anything that it just felt like a gift, or was it something symbolic for you?
I
Mm,
don't think I've quite worked that out yet.
yeah.
It's a bit of a puzzle because I was looking at it because I get into the flow of painting and it just sort of flows
Yes.
through me, and I'm kind of like I'm sure you know the feeling, because your beautiful artwork, that it's just kind of comes, and I've got to figure it out. I could try and figure it out consciously later, and I'm like, I have no idea what that message is, or if that's a message for me, or if that's a message for someone else.
Yeah. And do you find that later on, say maybe a long while later, you'll suddenly realize, oh my gosh, there's something happening in my life now, and I realize why I painted that?
Sometimes,
Mm.
but then sometimes I don't think it's actually for me, and I'll be at a show or an event, and somebody will come and see the painting, and it will just speak to their soul somehow, and
Yes.
I'll be like, okay, that was for you.
Yeah.
And it's often the painting that they buy and want to live with. So I've got this sort of feeling that the paintings I do, they've got somewhere they need to go, that I'm kind of I don't know what the word is,
Channel
the
or
kind of the channel, or the idea, it comes through me, but it doesn't,
yes.
it's to go out into the world rather
Yes.
than just to
I get
stay with
that.
me. Like, and there's somebody,
Mm,
yeah, do you know what I mean?
I get
Yeah.
that from the art that I do, and I think, oh, I'm just doing this because I enjoy it. I don't, like you say, it's just I want to create this image. It's come to me for some reason. I'm really enjoying this, and then I'll put it out, and people will resonate it for some reason and see a meaning in it, or get a feeling from it that I haven't, you know, I haven't
Yeah.
seen. I'm thinking, oh, this is draw these little jolly gnomes. And somebody go, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
that means
It's
so
incredible
much to
how
me. Yeah.
that's amazing. I kind of like see it like a healing medicine. Like, they
Mm,
were bringing these energies through to go out into the world, and it's for healing the culture in some way. Like, because we're
yes.
disconnected, like the culture, the overculture is kind of so disconnected from the realness of the land and the earth, that
Mm,
bringing it through in such an imaginative and playful and whimsical way feels that it's kind of like a little bit of a like antidote, or a bit of medicine, or something to,
I,
yeah.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's what you're doing. I'm doing, other people I know in some way. It's it's bringing this information through, putting it out there, and then even if it's just one person that listens to this or sees your art and they have a little shift, positive shift in their life in any way, then it's
Yeah,
like something, it is good medicine, isn't it? It's good medicine. And we're
it's
not,
incredible.
yeah, we're not doing it totally for that purpose, but it's kind of like a knock on effect, or a part, that comes
Um,
through, isn't it? Maybe, I don't know. We're not always conscious of why we're doing things. We just think, oh, this is a good thing to do.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
someone receives it,
Uh,
yeah, it goes, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And you think, oh, really? Oh, okay. So it's like putting jigsaw puzzle pieces together, I think, isn't it? About
yeah, yeah,
what we're doing.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm,
Oh, that just reminded me of this one time I was at a market, and it was raining, and it was grey, and
mm.
I had to like really like talk myself into being there, because I didn't want to be, it was just like, oh, I want to be in the warm. Like, no, my job is to take this out into the world. I'm gonna be the sunshine today. That's what I'm gonna do. And this old man came up to my stall, and his like aura was just all grey, and he was wearing all grey, and he was like coming to the stall, and then he came and looked, and then he like opened up like a beautiful flower, looking at the art, and then he finished looking at it, and then he kind of closed back down and went, just like, I don't think I'm explaining this very well, but it was just such an incredible moment to see how that effect, like his inner child of delight and joy, came out for just those few moments. It's like, this is why I do this. This is what makes it worth it. This is why I'm standing in the rain in Malvern.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Oh my gosh.
That moment.
I don't know what it is, your the way you talk about your work, Rachel, is so authentic, and so that description was perfect, you know, of how people react and interact with what you do. And what better testimony, really, that you're on the right path, and to see that in somebody, you know, and to be able to see that is a real gift, I think, because not everyone notices these things, you know. And I think maybe as an artist, maybe we're more attuned, you know, empathically in tune to people's responses. Is that how you feel? I mean, that's just my interpretation. Is that how you feel, that you're very empathically connected to other people and their journeys as well as your own?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm quite sensitive, very sensitive. I could, because certain things that have happened in my life, I'm quite hyper vigilant as well. So people's emotional states, and that empathy and hyper vigilance, kind of like, that wasn't very expressive, but yeah, there's this.
No.
So I'm really, really aware of people's emotional states around me.
Yeah.
So when I see, when I see people looking at my paintings, it's absolutely incredible to see completely different responses and emotions that people bring out. And I've lost my train of thought now.
No, sorry. It's probably me sitting here trying not to. I'm emotional wreck.
Oh, I give you a big hug.
So, that's beautiful. Thank you. So the other thing that we were going to talk about was talking about interacting, was fairy conversation. And
Oh,
a fairy, this is beautiful. You were talking about this fairy conversation. So I'll let you tell the story. I'm going to sip some tea.
have a
Yeah,
little sip of tea there.
some tea. This is Earl Grey tea today. What have you got?
Lovely.
What tea are you drinking?
Vanilla rhubarbe.
Oh, lovely. Mm.
Cozy. Oh yeah. So the fairy conversation. So, but earlier in the year, I had to have an operation on my ankle. I'd had all these screws and pins put in after that I broke my ankle,
Yeah.
and they weren't happy in there. Well, my bones weren't happy with them, so I had to have those taken out.
Mm.
And not long after that, there was a White Horse camp, which is like a druid camp that happens at Wildways for Beltane.
Yes.
And which was really, I did get to go for a few days, which was really lovely. And we did a maypole dance and some different rituals and things. And then one of the evenings, one of the ladies, this is a brilliant sound bath gong kind of healer lady, and we all went down to the yurt and for this sound bath. And as I was lying there, and I'll often have visions and things whilst I'm having a sound bath, and I suddenly became aware of these little, about a foot tall fairy beings, and there's two by my ankle giving me healing, and then there was one with her little hands on my head, and I could kind of, when you're aware of the room when you've got your eyes closed and you can kind of see it. and so I could see them in the room in that way.
Hmm.
But they were discussing me and chatting away, like going, wow, well, she's living up in the village now. I think this and that about that. And the other one was going, well, she needs to spend more time on the land. And I think we need to tell her that she needs to spend more time on the land. And they were like discussing all different areas of my life and disagreeing with each other. And I was lying there going, what on earth is going on? And I opened my eyes to like look and see if I
Yeah.
could actually see them with my eyes. And I couldn't. And I was like, oh, I just need to be really quiet so I can listen to them and they don't realise I'm coming.
How funny. Into. Okay. Yeah. So you were talking about this, the sound bath and hearing the conversation with the fairies. Um, and did you get an impression of what they were like? You know, did they have different voices, or was it one older than the other, or male, female?
Female.
Yeah.
They're definitely female. Um, and they were quite opinionated. Two of them were louder than another one. And the one that was doing the healing on my head seemed to be a little bit more, I don't know how to put it, like, not that she was in charge, but she seemed to be more like if there was a hierarchy, she'd be at the higher in it. But then the other one that was very opinionated by my ankle was also completely happy to go, well, no, I think this. And
Yeah.
if that makes any sense.
Yes.
And how I saw them in my mind's eye was they were kind of glowy and ethereal and not fully solid.
Mm.
With like a greeny, like almost like they got greeny blue outline, like with the light folds in their clothes. And
Oh, wow.
so,
So,
and I think they are beings of wild ways, because this, which is the retreat center.
okay.
So that place has had a lot of ritual and ceremony
Mm.
and shamanic work on the land, so it's very awake and alive. There's all
Mm.
sorts of beings there, sort of seen, unseen, and kind of semi
Yeah.
me semi-seen, really.
Is it open to the public, or is it it's a retreat center that you book a retreat onto? And, yeah.
Yes, yeah, you have to book a retreat there.
Mm.
Um, they do druid camps, witchy camps, tantra, five rhythms, all sorts of lovely
Oh,
things.
sounds amazing.
It's the best place
Yeah.
I've ever painted. So I've had the absolute magical luck of being invited, well, asking if I could paint there.
Oh,
After
wow.
my ankle healed a few years ago, because I got
Mm.
this cellar, this dark, damp, dingy cellar I was painting in, and I was really
Oh.
struggling to
Mm.
paint. And a friend of mine who runs Five Rhythms retreats there was like, well, why don't you ask and see?
Mm.
So after that last lockdown, I found my way to painting there.
Yeah, that's yeah, sorry.
Sorry, what were
Yeah.
you gonna
No, I was just saying this, that's interesting that you had that feeling that you needed to go there after lockdown. I mean, was that spurred on by that time and you thought, right, I'm gonna go for it and find some amazing places to work in? Or
I'd first been there in Salway in 2019, just before I broke up with my ex-partner.
Yes.
And when I set foot on the land there, it felt, I don't know, I had this like intuitive sense that this is going to be an incredibly important place, like in my life. And I didn't really know how. I thought maybe it's just I'll come to retreats here quite regularly. But then in the lockdowns, I'd been bubble friends with my friend Neil, who's a 5 rhythms teacher, who, when I was in Starport, he lived a mile away, so we ended up in a bubble and going for lots of walks and things. And he'd lived there years ago, and he runs like regular retreats there, probably like 5 times a year and New Year's and all that. And so his connection with that place, through our friendship, I became more connected, and I'd go and help be his assistant on his retreats that he could do between the lockdowns and things like that. And then when I was struggling with painting in this cellar, he was like, well, why don't you ask Elaine and see what she says? Like, and then Elaine said, well, oh yeah, of course you can. Like, you're welcome to. And so, and I was really shocked. And after going through all of that, I was kind of like in pieces and exhausted by all of the ankles and moving and everything. So it was real solace and real beautiful, just place to be in nature. And you can hear muntjac deer barking every day, and there's like foxes and owls, and it's so just the nature there, and the land, the way it so palpably speaks to you. And then after a few months of painting there, the people I was lodgering with decided they wanted to renovate the attic, and I had about 6 weeks to find somewhere else to live, and I tried everything. And I went to see loads and loads of houses, and then right at the end I found this one in Cookley, and so I was just like, fine, that will do, it's somewhere to live, I'll have somewhere to live, I don't have to put everything in storage. And I hadn't really checked it out properly, and then I moved all my stuff in, and then the guy was really weird. So, and I stayed there one night, and there wasn't a lock on the door, and I ended up barricading the door and feeling really unsafe. And then the next morning he texted me going, oh, don't unpack. And I was like, okay. And then he came and he said that he didn't want me to live there. Okay then.
Yeah.
I don't really want to live here either.
No.
So, and I called up a friend with that, I just don't know what to do. And had a good cry, and she's like, why don't you call Elaine and see if you can at least put your stuff in her shed and in a barn, and then figure out. And she's like, come and stay for a few months, you can live in the pig pen. And
pig pen. Wow.
So
Yeah.
so I'm spending this 8 months living in this converted pig pen.
I was going to say, the pig's still there.
The spirits of the pigs are still It's got a little log burner and an electric what's it called, plug thing, but there's no water. There's the kitchen's around the corner and the toilet's around the corner.
Oh, it sounds gorgeous.
It's got little windows, and it was absolutely a complete sanctuary, and absolutely I mean, it was hard, like especially the winter was really hard at times, but it was an absolute delight as well, being that close to nature. And the beings there were incredible. And the retreats, the people you meet on this retreat centre that come through, this like Norwegian shamans and academics like specialising in like folklore and animism and it's just wow. I
Okay.
just like listen. I just want to listen to everybody and just soak up everything.
Yeah, I can imagine.
um,
That's yeah.
yeah, and that really um grounded me into a different kind of connection with nature as well, the real practical connection, because like I always been like, oh, beautiful trees, hug the trees, but I hadn't been like, oh, out into the woods cutting down wood to then dry it to so it can be firewood, and then going and getting it with a wheelbarrow, and then working out how to get it to light when it's cold and dark and rainy, and you get home and it's 10 o'clock at night, like, I've got to make a fire. Why isn't my fire? Please, fire spirits, please.
Yeah.
So it's given me a much more grounded and practical relationship with nature, which I think is coming out through my artwork now too. And the kind of the level of ethereal and then the level of earthly is sort of finding the thread through, because I can be quite airy. I'm a Taurus, but the Scorpio rising and the Gemini moon are quite a mix.
Oh, the Scorpio. So yeah, because I'm not an astrologer, but I did a little astrology course beginning of this year about my birth chart,
Oh
and we
yeah.
learned, and it was on a course, so we all learned about everybody's aspects in their birth charts and things. And so your ascending sign, the way I understand it, is like your path to the sun. That's how
Oh
your vehicle to get to the sun. So your Scorpio is your pathway to your what who and what you are.
yeah.
That's the way I
What's your
understand it. I'm a Libra rising sign, so I'm a Capricorn,
yeah.
but Libra rising. So I've got the earthiness that's keeping me grounded, but then the Libra, that imagination, uh, balance, connection to sparkly things, airiness. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my
That is
moon,
Libra air energy.
yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And then my moon is in Aries, which is to do with the inner child and expressing the inner child.
Yeah.
Yeah, and fire.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so you've got earth and water and what's your moon sign?
uh, Gemini.
Gemini, so
So
air.
air.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I find it
Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah, sorry, carry
It
on.
is really fascinating. Yeah, and the wateriness, because I can be very emotional and sensitive. I think that comes from my Scorpio.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Yeah, and also that
Interesting mix.
connection to the depth and darkness, and being able to express that as well. The dark,
Yeah.
because you were talking in your bio, you talk about when you were a teenager and you created some very quite dark artwork that you didn't share.
Oh,
But
you've frozen up.
can you
Oh,
hear me still?
yeah, I can hear
Oh, okay, yeah,
you.
yeah. The artwork you were creating as a teenager, and
Yeah.
you're talking about how it's quite dark and how you kept your art quite private, and now I mean making that shift from keeping art private to stepping into your power as an artist. How's that come about? Does it come about through your nature connection and otherworldly connection, that standing in, or was it other things?
Yeah. So, yeah, as a teenager, I was making some really weird, dark stuff. I'd learned about the surrealist techniques of like finding the image in the image and automatic drawing. And I'd been through some really, really, really dark times in my childhood. And I think that was all kind of drawing was my kind of coping strategy, really. Rather than it being art as such, it was fully just expression and trying to release what was needing to come out. And then I went off and did various little jobs and things, and like from care assistant to animal health licensing officer and recruitment, all sorts of things. And then in my early 20s, I got very poorly, and the mental health things from the younger ages came back with an absolute vengeance, and I couldn't leave the house for nearly a year, and the only thing I could do really was draw and paint and get it out. And I hit rock bottom, and the only thing, and I've been to Glastonbury. I don't feel like I'm telling this very well.
No, it's good. No, don't worry. You are.
Yeah, I've been to Glastonbury for the first time and picked up some books on like law of attraction and cosmic ordering and that kind of thing. And in this sort of rock bottom place, I imagined myself a life that would be a life that would be worth living, because the one I was living at the time was not. I was really struggling with my mental health. So I decided that I wanted to be an artist, and I wanted to live on a retreat centre. And basically, I wrote down my life as it is now, almost, with there's a few extra things that haven't happened yet that I'm working on. And I wrote it all down, and I was like, that's what I'm going to do. If I'm going to live, that's what I'm going to do. So I did. And a few months later, they were doing a fine art course at the local university in Worcester. And I was like, right, that's what I need to do. I need to go and at the time I could barely leave the house without having a panic attack. And like even going to Tesco's was too much for me. But I decided that is the ladder. That's how I get out of this situation. So I went to uni, and it was terrifying showing anyone my art because I didn't show anyone it at all. So before I went for my interview, I started showing. I got this friend called Ollie, and he died this year, bless him. And he was like, yeah, I showed him my art, and he was like, yeah, go and, you've only got one life, go and do that. That's so I did, and I got it, and I'd done all these like really tight watercolors, like of kind of, oh, look what my skills are like. But then in the back of my portfolio, I got some really weird, dark, twisted faces and charcoals, and they were really interested in that. And then they gave me a place on the course, and from there luckily they got a really good wellbeing centre at the university, so I got to have a therapist, and managed to stick with it. And even like I was, painting and crying at times. It was just like, this is what I need to do. So by the end of my degree, I got used to the idea. I'd sort of desensitized myself from showing people my art, and was quite happy to like let people see what I've been doing. And I got there was this thing called the Speed Project, which was run by the European Union, and they gave you business training and business funding to start up a business after university. So I put together an application and went and did the presentation, and managed to get a space on this course that was an extra module on top of my fine art modules. And so when I left uni, I'd had marketing training and accounts training, and had a vague idea of how to run a business. And then I moved to Malvern at the end of the last week of my degree. And just down the road from me was this little studio called Fairies. And I walked past and saw there was a studio available.
Oh,
And I was like, oh my God, that would be a total dream if I could go and paint there. So, and then I got an email through saying, oh, if anyone needs any extra funding, put together a pitch of why you need it.
oh,
And,
amazing.
so we did. And then not long later, I got an email saying, oh, here you go. And I called up the lady and her name was Kay. And when I turned up, she just gave me a massive hug and we got on straight away. And it was just, we were both on the same kind of wavelength. And then it sort of started from then. I've had a lot of luck from there, or synchronicities, or whatever you want to call it. And that was back in 2011. So I've been learning how to do this. I feel like every day I'm still learning how to do being a business artist and a business person.
Yes, yeah, and I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's not easy.
And all these new things that are coming out all the time, and new ways of doing things, and yeah, I can imagine. But you are successful, though. I mean, you've got your beautiful website, and I've seen you at the Karen Case Fairy Fair in Glastonbury that you're going to be at again soon, aren't you? In
The end of October.
yeah, the end of October. Not sure when this episode will go out. That might have happened by the time this goes out, but yeah. So that's wonderful that you set that intention. Because I mean, I've got a background in the kind of meditation and coaching that I trained in, which was Thrivecraft.
Okay.
Is all based on that. Allowing the setting intention and the law of attraction stuff, really, and it's been, it's worked for me as well. It's and like you say, it's be careful what you wish for, because what intentions you set will come to you. But I think it's always good, isn't it? Even though it doesn't feel good necessarily at the time, and there can be challenges like you've been through, it does seem to move us to a better place in the end, would you say? I mean, on the whole?
Yeah.
On the whole.
Yeah.
Lately
on the whole, yeah.
Lately on the whole, yeah. Depends on the experience and things, but
really interested. What did you call it?
Thrivecraft, yeah, which was set up by my friend and mentor Kay Starr, who's she lives on the Isle of Cambrai in Scotland. And I met her. I was looking to do a meditation trainer course in 2013, and they were all in London. And then I came across this one in Totnes, and that's how I met Kay. And did my meditation training and coach training with her. So that's I've seen for myself how this setting intentions and surrendering and all that.
That's not the easy part.
No, that's not the easy part, because we naturally want to hold on to it, don't we? And especially in difficult times when we want things to be different. Like, come on, and it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Oh,
I really like the name Thrivecraft. I'm gonna have to look that up later.
Thrivecraft,
That just has a real beautiful, yummy to it.
Yeah, thrivecraft.com.
Cool.
Website. She's K Star, so K AYSTA. She's one of my friends on Facebook. So yeah, look her up on there. Give her a friend request. Yeah. And the other thing we were thanks for sharing all of that.
I'm really surprised I'm actually sharing all this.
loving hear about your journey. And again, this, there'll be people see that resonate with that journey
Yeah.
you've been on. I mean, I certainly do as well. You mentioned, I made some notes at the beginning, you mentioned about dragons and your dragon connection. And there's a couple of things, wasn't there? There was dragons and trees, but I love what you were saying about dragons and hills. So could share a bit about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So around the time I got the studio at 4A, I moved to Malvern, which is this absolutely beautiful range of hills in Worcestershire, on the border of Worcestershire and Herefordshire. And it's got like 40 sacred springs, and it's granite, and it's an incredibly magical place. And the first night I lived in the flat that I moved to there, I had this dream of the dragon of the hill, and it told me that my job in Malvern was to take the energy of Malvern out into the world. And I was just like, well, I don't know how to do that. When I woke up, and I got this beautiful Malvern stone wall in my house, which is granite and all the different colours of granite. And I kind of connect with that. And then slowly over time, these drawings, I really like to do automatic sort of intuitive drawings, and the drawings of the hills with a dragon sleeping on them, I just kept drawing them. And even from afar, Malvern kind of looks like a sleeping dragon.
Yeah.
So I started to do those. And I'd go onto the hills and really connect with the energy, but it's quite a sleepy sort of, feels very powerful, but it also feels quite sleepy, and like the dragon sort of, if you need me, I'll be here, but I'm having a good nap. So yeah, that's the kind of sense I get of that dragon. And then was it a few years later, I can't remember exactly when, was it 2014, 2015, after I'd been drawing all these dragons, I got a somehow, like, my first ever mural project was this enormous dragon in Malvern Library, and scene of the hills and all different animals reading books. And I'd been through a really difficult time that year with certain things which don't really want to share, but it was something that really broke my heart. But 2 weeks after that happened, I got to paint this enormous protective dragon mural that I found out later that children, when they do their visualizations of their safe space in Malvern, some of them, that's in their inner world, and that's where they have as their safe space.
Really? Oh gosh.
It's delightful. Wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, how beautiful. So it's like a collective and consciousness connection. Yeah.
It's so the dragon that I saw in my dream, that then became my drawings, that then became my paintings, then got into the library, and then are now in children's inner worlds, in their imagination. Like, they've got a link through to that dragon too, if they're not doing it directly, which I think everyone does, even if they're not conscious of it.
That's beautiful.
It's so special. But dragons have started to reappear in my drawings lately, actually, but they're more kind of like sitting over the land rather than curled up on top of hills, which is quite interesting. But then I'm in much more of a rolling part of the country now rather than big hills. So I guess,
Yes, different kinds of dragon energy, maybe.
yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of red sandstone around here, and I haven't quite understood. I'm still getting to know this land, and because it's got a very different feel about it
Mm.
to the granite of Malvern. It's like, yeah,
I love hills. Well, Devon is obviously very hilly, and I'm not far over in that direction. Is a hill fort, like less than a kilometre away from me.
oh, cool.
Yeah, and then I've got another hill, like fort that way as well, less than a kilometre that way behind me. There's also like this strange conical hill called Darracombe Beacon, which is a big sort of conical, pointy uphill.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody really knows how people in ancient times used these places. I think they probably used very, very sacred places and then became fortified at a later date. That's just my feeling that, the purposes have changed over time, haven't they?
Yeah,
Um,
I kind of agree with you there. That
mm,
because they're very the hill forts in there's two hill forts in Malvern, and Midsummer Hill, one of them that's, I think people probably like it was their sacred space, and then when things started to happen that weren't so pleasant, they went up to be with that because it's protective, and the dragon will protect them, and yeah.
yes. Yeah, of course, the dragon energy is there as well. And then there's a brilliant new documentary on YouTube. It's it's a podcast I follow called The Journey to Truth. Sorry, I forgot the name of the two presenters, but they're based in Illinois. I think it's in America. And they've created a documentary about the Cahokia Mounds which are in
What are they?
the Cahokia Mounds. I think that's how you pronounce them. That are these sacred mounds in Illinois, and in that part, they're Indian burial mounds. But some of them have flat tops on them, and they look really similar to our hill forts. So I think it's all kind of like these places are global, aren't they? Like the pyramids, and it's just
Yeah,
depending on the culture and the historical narrative, people have named them in a certain way. Whereas they're ancient places that we've lost how they were originally their original purpose. But yeah, so it's
yeah.
interesting stuff. I love it.
That sounds ever so interesting. I'll have to.
Yeah,
What was it called?
it's called Cahokia Man. So I think it's Cahokia is Cohokia Mounds documentary, and it's Journey to Truth are the two guys that have made it. So it's only on YouTube, I
Oh, I'll
think.
have a look.
Yeah, it's really
That
worth
sounds really.
watch. Yeah, it's fascinating because they go into the um, Native American culture and beliefs, and just all the history and evidence as to what, and giants as well. Burials of these giant skeletons that have, so say, been um, taken away by the Smithsonian and hidden away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Oh, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a bit of a tangent, but talk about hills. Oh, is that all you want to say about the dragons? Because is there anything else you'd like to share about dragons? Shall we move on to trees? Or...
Oh, I'm doing umming.
No, don't worry. I do it all the time.
um,
Uh,
so, well, I guess my experience with the Glastonbury Tor dragon
oh yes.
is quite different to the Malvern dragons, because the Malvern dragon's quite sleepy, and like sleeping dragon. But the Glastonbury Tor dragon, I had this beautiful experience when I was in Glastonbury last year, where I felt really drawn to walk up the Tor. And the friend I was with, as soon as I was like, right, I'm going to go, he was like, I had a phone call off someone that he needed to speak to. I was like, right, I'm off. I'm going on by myself. I'll see you later. And I went up the Tor, and there was no one else there, and it was really special. And I find when I'm alone in places, I can connect. My senses and I'm more open, and I can feel and communicate with things more than when I'm with a friend there, because you've always got that sort of energy as well. So I walked up to the top, and then I intuitively kind of did this. I walked around and sang just whatever came to me around the top, and I felt the dragon in the Tor just sort of like shifting a little bit, and it felt really beautiful, but powerful, but really awake. And I was like, oh, this is a bit much. But because yeah, it was just, oh, okay, am I sure I'm supposed to be doing this? But then as I was walking around, this whole painting of the Tor just popped into my head, and the dragon that was sitting on top of the Tor was completely awake. And all the dragons that I've kind of experienced and drawn in the landscapes before have been asleep. And like we were saying before we started recording, there's so much that goes on there. It's like woken the dragon up.
Yeah,
And
it's like blimey, what's going
it doesn't mind. I don't think it does. This painting, and then as soon as I got back to my friend's house, I was just like, I've got to draw this. and it just, yeah, so I painted that one, but it didn't stay around for long. I think I sold it the first time I showed it.
amazing?
Absolutely beautiful. But that one's been licensed as a greetings card with my greetings cards publisher, and I think I can't remember if my I've got a licensing agent who gets things made into like diamond art kits and cross stitches, and I'm not sure if that one's one of those as well. It's got little fairies in it too, and
Oh,
mushrooms.
beautiful. Have a look. All these are on your website, are they? Yeah, yeah. Great. I'd love to see that. Oh, fantastic. And just before we end, 'cause I know we're coming up to about, I said about an hour and a half, but I really, I remember when we first connected a few months ago about you coming on, you said about the trees and connecting with, I think it's a fairy portal in Glastonbury.
Oh yeah,
Is that, are you able to
yeah,
remember that one? Mm.
yeah. So there, there's this woodland. I can't remember what it's called, but it's just outside of Glastonbury. And me and a friend went for a walk just before I was doing my bardic initiation around this time last year. It was when I was doing the fairy fair, so it was October. On the Monday after the fairy fair, I was doing my bardic initiation the next week, and we went to see if we could find me a staff and whether the woods wanted to give me a staff. So my friend's very spiritual, so like has quite a lot of experience with like druidry stuff, and so we went and asked the woods if there was a staff there for me, and we walked around and we did find a staff, but it was blackthorn, and I didn't feel that I was ready for a blackthorn staff.
Mm.
Because there's a lot of associations with blackthorn. Maybe one day, but I'm still quite early on my path with understanding kind of these sorts of things, and it felt just a bit too powerful. And we went into this different part of the woods, and there, you know, when there's just a different feeling, it just changes slightly, and it just kind of feels a bit more dreamy and a bit more. And we noticed this little path going off, and we were like, oh, should we go and have a look? And he's like, oh, this is a fairy place, like we must kind of. So he spoke to the fae, and we found these 2 trees that like made like a little doorway and went through it, and we walked along, and we saw all these tiny little mushrooms all over this fallen tree. And then I sort of, you know, when your feet kind of in the land and you kind of just feel pulled, and I'd never quite had to call it, but there's this just sort of like magnetic feeling that you need to go this way. And it did. And there was this big red pine tree, and in the bottom of it was the most perfect fairy door, and it was glowing green.
Oh, I've got chills. Yeah.
And it was actually glowing green, and I was just like, oh my god, this is incredible. And it's actually real. I took a photo of it and everything, and so I think it, like in practical reality, it's like lichen or something, or some kind of green, but it was so vibrant, especially against the red. And I just sat there, and you know those little dots of light that you see, some like, I don't know if you get that, do you?
Yeah. Yes.
Little dots of light just and I was just like, oh my god, this is so special. And but
Yeah.
I was in awe, and I didn't even hug the tree because it just felt like it was too like beautiful to like even touch it, so I kind of was at a respectful distance. So I did a painting of that one afterwards as well. And I wasn't going to put fairies in it, but then there was a little bit of paint that kind of looked like a fairy. I'm like, oh, okay. And then all these little fairies started appearing, and then in the bark of the tree there's all like faces in the tree, and then there's a fairy up in the leaves, and it was such a delight experiencing like the kind of exploring the painting through the paint as I painted it as well. It was just so magical.
Yeah, that is incredible. It sounds like, yeah, it sounds like one of those, like you say, it's like journeying, isn't it? We're journeying with the paints, and wow, fantastic. What a lovely experience.
In the woods one day, I think we'd see.
Yeah, I'd love to do that when we're both in Glastonbury, or if I come up your way to Shropshire. But
It's
yeah,
really, oh, the world needs fairy things so much at the moment, I think. I'm really grateful for what you're doing, actually, because
oh,
it's
thank you.
wonderful. Whilst I've been painting, sometimes I listen to your podcast, and it gives me a little bit more confidence in talking about my fairy things, because I've often been like, oh, it's all my imagination. And I really, yeah.
Yeah, and it's turning around. Thank you for saying that. It's turning around. The imagination is how we create our world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even from like whoever invented the wheel came from their imagination.
Yeah, the whole
So,
everything's creativity. Like that's what I'm really enjoying about the druidry bardic thing, is they've got this concept called Arwen, which is the divine inspiration, which is something I've believed in since I was like, could remember believing in anything, because everything's creativity, and creativity flows through all things. And it's amazing. This last few years I've found like fairy people through Karen Kay's thing and your podcast, and yeah, it's amazing. What a magical world we live in.
It is magical, isn't it? I think that's it. I think it's a choice, isn't it? We can choose to put our focus to things that aren't great in the world, or we can choose to put it on, well, actually, there is a lot of good in the world still, or people that are creating wonderful things, like you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for being a wonderful guest, Rachel. It's been wonderful talking to you, and yeah, really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight.
Yeah. So I'll say